So amongst us, the failure of our nation has reduced us into people of merely expectation. It is now time to turn the table and to raise our expectation. As you raise your expectation, you will find incredible solutions that will come from out of you. Does that help?
Yes, ma'am. We have about 4 more questions. The next one is, how do we translate a new Nigeria vision to millions of Nigerian youths in the absence of viable educational infrastructure?
Hard question to answer. Very hard question to answer. Because I know. I was in that sector. We're in trouble. At the time I was minister in that sector, we were in trouble. And that was about 6 years ago. And not much has changed our situation. They have the largest number of children out of school in Nigeria. About 2 million of Nigerian children leave school every year to join the labor market. And the issue there, Pastor Boju, is this: employability and employment opportunity. 2 major issues: employability and employment opportunities. And on the 2 scores, the reform in our education sector has not scratched the surface. So imagine every year you generate 2 more millions and they join. You create whole countries of European Union out of that army of unemployed people. Tertiary education, you see the challenge that we're in. Not getting to a place of agreement on how to develop the university system. The Onosobe negotiation team was something that we set up at the time that we were in government. A great man. Who doesn't know Gamaliel Onosobe? Deacon Gamaliel Onosobe did great work to push a common understanding. The conversation on autonomy, making sure that it is linked and connected to accountability and performance. And that when you talk about autonomy and funding public grants to universities, you do it in a kind of way to incentivize competitiveness amongst universities. You don't want to create a race to the bottom of societies. For too long, we have all raced to the bottom. And as I said, we need to switch it. The only vehicle through which it can be done is education. So what can you do? Voice. Voice. How many of you followed the reform in the education sector when I was a minister? How many of you? Look at the big hall. But I can tell you that among some of those who did not put up their hand, there are those that have said, what did they even do in education? How can you know if you did not follow? How can you know if you do not have the facts? That is an important issue. For me, your effectiveness in building this from civilian rule to a democracy is going to be your capacity to perennially inform yourself with policy evidence. Evidence. Don't just talk. Anecdote. They said, they didn't say. Find the facts behind the saying. If you had looked at the education sector reform, it had to be comprehensive. Because education is an organic activity. You cannot simply take one aspect of education and handle it and assume that it will take care of the rest. No, it will not. The 6 spheres and segments in education: early childhood education, basic education, secondary education, tertiary education, special needs education. How many of you know Steve Hawkins? Many of you know the physicist in Cambridge? Yeah, Stephen. Imagine. Without special needs education, how would the brain, the mighty brain of that fellow be available to his country and the world? We found empirically that in every public school system, between 10, in some cases 20% of the children have special needs issues. And our public education system is blind to them. Early childhood education is the exclusive preserve of the elite of the society. But you know what? It is what will determine which country goes ahead of the other. The reason is simple. A child is at their best readiness for learning between the age of 2 and 3. But between the ages of 2 and 3 in our own society, other than maybe some 15% of the elite, the rest of the children are the children of the poor, isn't it? Between the ages of 2 and 3, they are busy swallowing plenty of a bar, which would further fossilize the brain. And the gap that would happen at that time, they would never catch up. So today, a country like Norway makes early childhood education something that every nation must look at. Why? Norway, through early childhood education, basically ensures that every year it comes stops. In almost 2 decades now, Norway comes stops in the global ranking of the world in terms of the quality of the school system. Another thing that that country does is quality of teachers. The top 10% of people in Norway go to teach. Top 10%. They don't go to become bankers. They don't go looking to become Speaker of the House of Assembly in their state in order to get their own piece of the pumpkin. They actually go to teach. It's part of what has brought their success. And guess what, Simon? In the US, the bottom 30% go to teach. So what do you think US, where do they stand on that ranking? Number 14. It shows up. I'm sure you don't want us to talk about our own. Let's just respect ourselves. So what I am canvassing is that education, the way we envisaged it during the reform, is that it's no longer something that only the government can have solutions for. It must provide the leadership. It must coordinate the process of the many multiple stakeholders that will be part of the process of delivering education at the different levels and the different segments and spheres. But the role of citizens is so key. Every one of you must become important voices for education. For example, one of the reforms in our education sector was called Community Accountability and Transparency Initiative, CATI. It was simple. It was a way of